Well, scientists care about evidence. So my attitude to anything is let's start with stuff that's true. I'm a world famous problem solver, right? I solve problems for Apple, for Lego, for BASF. I've solved some of the really tough problems that people struggle to solve. And the way that I solve the problem is I read about it and I make sure I really understand it. And once you understand something, the solutions become obvious.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're here today with Dr. Chris DeArmitt, who's an internationally acclaimed material scientist and the world's #1 ranked plastics expert. He just released a super interesting book, Shattering the Plastics Illusion, and we're going to dive into what he's discovered in that book and kind of just go into the counter argument that plastic's actually not as bad as people think. So, Dr. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Matt. Really a pleasure. Thanks for setting it up.
Sure thing. So to start out, why don't you just give us a little recap of what your book is about and how you got into writing this?
Yeah, so the reason I got into writing it is that my daughters came home from school one day, elementary school, they were 8, and they'd been told by their teacher that plastics don't degrade. And that's just an outright lie. I was shocked to my core and really angry as a scientist. I've been on 60 Minutes with Scott Pelley talking about just how quickly plastics in the body degrade, for example, and how you shouldn't use the wrong kind of medical stuff in your body if it's made of plastic and so forth. So that's one of my real expert areas, plastic degradation. And because I knew that that was wrong, categorically wrong, like there's thousands of studies on it, I started to wonder what of the other things my kids are being taught, how much of that is right? Are metal straws better than plastic ones? They got metal straws free from school, for example. Is that true? And so forth. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole. And I ended up reading, I never would have done this. If you'd have told me on day one, you're going to end up reading 5,000 studies unpaid to then share the facts for free, I would have told you you're out of your mind. It will never happen. But that's where we are today. I kind of got carried away, not to defend plastics, but because I don't want our kids growing up believing stuff that's not true.
That's crazy. Yeah. So what is the science behind the plastic breakdown that makes it not as bad as people are saying? I know people are saying it takes years and years and years to break down, but you were saying that you found some stuff that proves that it doesn't take all that long.
Yeah. The reason I was on 60 Minutes is they put this medical mesh inside you for a hernia repair and vaginal repair for women. And it's made of a plastic that should really not be in the body because it degrades too quickly. They want it to last decades and your body attacks it and it degrades in a couple of years. That's what the calculations show. So, and when it comes to plastic bags, for example, the World Wildlife Fund likes to tell us it will take 400 years for them to degrade. But if you look at their website or Greenpeace or any of the others, you'll never find a single scientific study cited to back up what they're saying. They just make this stuff up. So if you do go and look for the science, and you can check this yourself, you can go to the website. And everything I say, by the way, is peer-reviewed, checked by experts, by professors. I quote the science verbatim. I literally copy and paste from the abstract or the conclusion of the study, and then I provide links so you can go and check it yourself. Hundreds and hundreds of links. Anyway, so if you do go and check that yourself, plastic bag degradation or grocery bag degradation, you'll find out that the plastic bag degrades at the same speed as a paper bag, meaning less than 1 year outdoors. So we're being told hundreds of years or they don't degrade, and science says more than one study where they actually put it outside and measured it says that that's just wrong. It's just a lie. And I have a problem with that. I don't want our kids, as I said, growing up to believe lies. I don't want our politicians making policies based on lies. I don't want to see environmental groups telling us lies and making money off our donations, taking people with a good heart who really want to help the future, telling them some shocking, scary lies and getting their money out of their pockets. And sadly, that's what's happening now.
So what's the motivation for lying about that?
There are a few different ones that I've identified. One is, if you look behind me, there's a book called Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout. It's green. And it's by the former president of Greenpeace. And he's a PhD scientist. And he left in disgust and said, they've given up on the science long ago. It's just a bunch of money-grabbing marketing people who make up stories. He literally said, in writing, they make up fiction to get donations. That's their business model, according to him. And he says that the other big ones, have also been overcome by greed. And so the organizations that we trust to tell us the truth are not doing it. We assume that they're full of virtue and all their full of is greed. Not every NGO, obviously, but the bigger ones tend to get more and more corrupt because the money becomes more and more. And then the other side of it is that I've been told by reputable lawyers who've been in legal cases that they know for a fact that the metals and the glass and the paper industry are funding these lies about plastics. The ironic thing, though, is if you offered me a soda can, I would take the metal one or the glass bottle over the plastic one any day. I prefer them. But I don't like it that we're being, as I said, tricked into making decisions that cost us more and increase harm.
Yeah, what are some of the downsides of the anti-plastic kind of revolution we're in now? I know my grocery store is not giving out bags anymore. You have to buy those thick mesh plastic type ones that they have.
Yeah. That's the most studies I've ever seen. Grocery bags. I've never seen so many life cycle studies in my life. It's the most studied topic there is. There are 30 studies in the world on grocery bags, and every study ever done in any country shows that the polyethylene bag has least impact. Replacing it is a scientifically proven beyond doubt to lead to more CO2, more fossil fuel used, more waste. And ironically, this is the funny thing, when they banned the plastic bag in, like, for example, in New Jersey, they went in and saw, well, what was the effect of this plastic bag ban? And they found out that the effect was to sell a lot more plastic. Because of what we were talking about before we started, right? You have a plastic grocery bag from Kroger. It's so thin that you can see through it. It's 6 grams. Paper bag is 60 grams. It's 10 times more waste. So you take this plastic bag, do your groceries. At the end of the time, you use it usually in the bathroom, right, as a trash can liner. And when you ban the plastic grocery bag, now people have to go and buy plastic trash can liners, which are 5 times thicker. So you end up, ironically, banning plastic bags, increasing harm, and increasing sales of plastic.
That's crazy.
That's the kind of crazy stuff that happens when people don't check the facts. And the thing is, these facts are not hidden. If you were to type into your Google search bar right now, LCA-BAG, you will find studies from Clemson and all around the world saying that the plastic bag has least. And these are not funded by the plastics industry. These are genuine independent studies worldwide. So that's kind of crazy.
That's crazy. I want to jump a little bit into your background. What is your work experience in plastic?
Yeah, I've got a PhD in material science, so I really understand. I'm a PhD in chemistry, basically, and material science. So I really understand on a molecular level how materials work. And so what I'm talking to you today about is not my job. My job is understanding materials, solving problems, creating new materials, formulating materials, putting in the correct additives to make them last long enough, for example. All of that. That's my real job. And what I'm speaking to you about today is just this kind of hobby I stumbled into. Of crusading for truth. I don't actually care what people do. I think people should have free choice. They should pick exactly what they want to buy, if it's leather, paper, plastic, whatever. But as I said, it really rubs me up the wrong way that people are getting away with making hundreds of millions from telling us lies. So there was a study by McKinsey, it just came out last week, showing that this is what customers, I'm looking at it right now. So customers think that glass is the number one green solution, and number 2 is paper, and number 3 is metal. They're completely wrong. Only 2% of customers actually realize that plastic has the lowest impact almost every time. 9 times out of 10, moving away from plastic increases harm. And this is the amazing thing, Matt. It means 4 times more waste to replace plastic, 3 times more greenhouse gas, and double as much fossil fuel used. And it will cost you more as well, right? So that's what people are choosing to do now because they were lied to.
So is it a virtue signaling thing, or is there money and lobbying behind this? What do you think the biggest proponent is?
That's a great question. Hardly anyone realizes that. So in my first book, The Plastics Paradox, there's a whole chapter about virtue signaling. And for anyone who doesn't realize, that's another word for it is, what is it? Grandstanding, social grandstanding. So basically, you walk around the supermarket swinging this cotton bag above your head, looking virtuous and saintly, when in actuality, it has 200 times more impact than the plastic bag did, right? So people want to look good, but they don't want to put in the work it would take to actually be good. And what I mean by that is they've done studies where people think that replacing a plastic bag is the number one thing they can do to help the environment. The 3 things they can actually do are drive less, fly less, and eat less meat. Those are the 3 things that would actually make a difference. The trouble with those things is that nobody wants to make the actual sacrifice it would take to be a good person. So instead, they pretend to be a good person by swinging their cotton bag over their head and say, look at me, I'm a hippie wonder kid. I'm saving the planet. So they want to look good to their friends without actually doing the things it would take and making the sacrifices it would take to be a good person. It's a lot easier to fake it than to really do it.
Hmm. That's so crazy. And to excuse me, to play a little bit of devil's advocate too, a lot of things you hear about now on podcasts and big things is that microplastics are invading the human body through food containers and just preparation and stuff like that. Did you dive into
Yeah.
any of that in your research?
I'm probably the world's number one independent expert on that. I've read more than
Okay.
500 studies. And when I say that, as I mentioned, I quote them verbatim, and I've had them checked by a team of professors all around the world who endorse this work. So it's not like one guy who with a lone voice against the rest of the world. This has been verified by professors all around the world.
Are the taints shrinking? And are we eating a credit card worth of plastic a week? That's my first.
No, the latest study specifically said that that credit card, you know who funded that credit card study? The World Wildlife Fund. They love that. They've got it up on their website next to a
Mhm.
big shiny donate now button. The trouble is that other scientists checked it and they said it's absolutely wrong. It's so mind-blowingly wrong, it couldn't be more wrong. It would take 10,000 years to eat that much plastic, according to independent studies, multiple studies, not funded by the World Wildlife Fund. And the funny thing about this microplastics thing is we should not really be surprised that there are plastic particles everywhere because we breathe dust all the time. Dust has existed since the beginning of time. And everything that's solid degrades into dust, right? Leaves crumble into dust, rocks become gravel, become sand, become dust, paper crumbles into dust. Everything, every solid particle degrades into dust. And that's not really a problem unless it's toxic, right? So if you look at the studies on plastic particles make up 0.01% of particles we breathe and ingest, and they're non toxic. They literally fed 5% plastic to rats for months and nothing happened. I mean, we have people see this as like a new unstudied threat, whereas science shows that it's not new. We've known about plastic particles and measured them for 50 years. It's not unstudied because we have more than 1,000 studies on it, and it's not a threat because it's non-toxic. But of course, you can make a fortune and make a name for yourself, get loads of funding as a scientist by claiming that they're dangerous. Or I found plastic on Mount Everest. I read one time. I'm like, can you imagine? I call the editor of the New York Times right now and say, "Hey, editor, I've got a story for you. I found some dust on my keyboard. Will you cover it?"
Yeah.
And they would laugh on the phone and put the phone down. But that's what people are getting away with publishing now. I found dust. And that's not news.
And
If it was uranium dust, it would be news, right? But if it's non-toxic dust, it's not news.
do you think they're just doing that just because they need a story or because it's a hot topic in the green space? What do you think the motivation behind all that side of the coverage is?
Oh, they need it. They want stories. Anything. If it leads, it bleeds. Isn't that the saying? So it doesn't have to be true. And nobody checks anything anymore. In fact, there was a recent study that showed a lie is 70% more likely to be retweeted than the truth because
Mm.
lies are so much more exciting than the truth. What I'm doing is telling you really boring science which is true and absolutely proven to be true, but not very exciting, right? Telling you that there's not an emergency is not exciting. If I tell you you're going to die tomorrow, everyone gets excited. So if I were to take the easy route, I would join the liars, I would make up sensational stories, and I'd be a millionaire next week from making up nonsense like we have a spoonful of plastic in the brain and other nonsense. Unfortunately, the way that I do it, telling the truth is very non-profitable and much harder work because when you make stuff up, you don't need any evidence. When you tell the truth, you have to go and read 5,000 studies and make sure you're right.
So, yeah, what is, I guess, your end goal with spending so much time and energy on this, which I really appreciate because we got to look at both sides of the argument and really sift through the facts and studies to find out what's actually true, what's the best use of our energy and time as citizens of the planet, which I mean, any normal person wants to protect, take care of our bodies, our friends and families, and the planet. What's your goal and
Right.
motivation through doing all this stuff?
Well, scientists care about evidence. So my attitude to anything is let's start with stuff that's true. I'm a world famous problem solver, right? I solve problems for Apple, for Lego, for BASF. I've solved some of the really tough problems that people struggle to solve. And the way that I solve the problem is I read about it and I make sure I really understand it. And once you understand something, the solutions become obvious. So here's an example. Um, right, let's look at ocean plastic. Everyone's into ocean plastic, right? So they go out and they measure this stuff. How much is there? We're told that it's 10 million tons a year and that there's an emergency. Science says it's more like a thousand ton or 10,000 tons a year, not 10 million, which means that there is no emergency. We don't have to drop everything. And what is in the ocean is nets from the fishing industry. So we know that there is no emergency because there's not enough plastic there to cause any harm whatsoever, apart from the nets. And the way to solve that is to regulate the fishing industry. That's an example where we easily identify from the data what the real problem is. And the trouble is, what we're doing now is we're regulating bags and straws and stuff that makes no difference. The total, if you were to add up all that consumer stuff in the ocean, bags and straws plus bottles, it's 0.03% of the ocean plastic. The other 85% is fishing nets, which nobody's regulating. They're telling us about the 0.03%. There's some other examples, like if you were worried about using too much material, which we hear all the time, we're drowning in plastic. Plastic is 0.5% of materials we use, right? And when I showed that to the Minister of the Environment of Mexico, she was shocked. And I presented it for some of the state attorneys general recently as well. They have no idea that we're spending 100% of our policy and 100% of our day talking about 0.5% of materials, right? So if you were genuinely worried about materials use or waste, you'd be talking at least some of the time about the other 99%, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, that seems insane. That 0.5%, that's like nothing.
Yeah. And you can check that. And then they say, of course, plastics are bad because they're growing exponentially, but they're growing at the exact same rate as paper, metal, glass, concrete, all the rest of them. So
is that measurement by like weight? Is that what
that's by weight? If you recalculate it by volume, it's 0.8%.
Okay. So even then, it's not even that big of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, so generally the theme is this. If you were to encapsulate the plastic story into one sentence, it's less than 1% of materials, waste, global warming, fossil fuel usage on a net basis, like if you consider both how much it uses and how much it saves, dust, everything you can measure, plastic is less than 1% of pretty much anything you can measure. And if you look at the life cycle studies, it's the greenest option 9 times out of 10. So there are alternatives, but they cost more and they make things worse almost every time. And that's what people are choosing. The people with the most conscience and the best will are creating the most harm because they've been misled.
Yeah, I mean, plastic's everywhere because it's such a great material. There's so many different styles of it, so many densities, strengths, and flexibilities. It's super light for how strong it is. It's been an amazing innovation for what it's been. And if you just pay attention to the popular, or I guess I shouldn't even call it science, but the popular opinion of it, it's the biggest problem that faces the planet right now. It's very, very weird.
Yeah. It is weird. I mean, I try not to say anything positive about plastic because it feels so cheap, but you're right. It is very important. It's saving lives. There's Kevlar vests. It's medical equipment. We wouldn't have computers. There wouldn't be electricity to our houses without plastic insulation on the wire. So all of these green nuts that I see every day beating their chest and saying virtue signaling and claiming to be saints, not one of them has shut off the electricity to their own house or moved into a cave and started a wood fire with some twigs and sat there and played with sticks and stuff like that. All of them are talking to me on their cell phone, which is made of plastic, telling me how bad the plastic is. So yeah, people need to kind of get a grip if they want to. And plus, if you really want to make a difference, go out and make a difference. We have real things to worry about. There's wars in the world. There's famine. There's medical problems. There's diseases. There are actual problems. We can't spend all day pretending that plastic is the number one problem when we could be out there saving lives and really making a difference.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And while I have you, I wanted you to give us a quick breakdown of what does plastic breaking down actually look like on the science level? What is happening when plastic breaks down? What is it breaking down into? How is that absorbed in the environment? And I'd love to hear about the human body too, because you hear it's the scariest thing you can read is that you're eating a credit card a week. There's plastic in everyone's brain. It's affecting hormonal changes in adolescence. It's the scariest thing ever, and most people have no science background at all on it.
I've done a hugely deep dive into that. In fact, if you search microplastics in the brain at Phantom Plastics, there's a whole page just with the science on that one topic. And then there's another one, microplastics in the blood. I've issued a statement about microplastics in the body. So the funny thing is, I was actually shocked when I heard that there's plastic particles in the body. And I thought, well, how can that be? But then, of course, we're breathing stuff in. We're not a closed system. So it turns out that and this is covered in the new, here's the new book, by the way. And before somebody says I'm here to sell books, I give my books away for free. This is a free PDF in multiple languages, and so is the last book. All the work I do is for free, and it's done. 5,000 hours I spent over 5 years unpaid to read the science. So it's all cited verbatim in there. It's for free. Anyway, so I was a bit shocked. And then I looked to see, well, how long have we known about particles in the body? Is this common for other particles? And the answer is yes. So it was first detected, plastics in the body, in 1844. Right?
Wow, that long ago?
150 years.
Yeah.
150 years we've known about plastic particles in the body. So it turns out everything that's in dust is in the body. Titanium dioxide and lead and cadmium and soot and all kinds of things. I have a huge list in the book of all the things. Everything that you can find in dust has been detected in the body, because our detectors now are so sensitive. They can detect. Have you heard of a part per million, 1 ppm? Some people sometimes say that. It's like 0.0001%. People can now detect a millionth of a part per million. And just to give you an idea, and then they tell you, I detected this, and you should panic, right? But it's just not true, because detecting tiny, tiny concentrations of things is not a problem. Things are only toxic if there's enough of it to cause a problem. So for an example, because it's hard to imagine a millionth of a millionth, if you were to start with the Eiffel Tower and take a millionth of that, it's like 8 pounds or something, and you take a millionth of that, you end up with one speck of dust. Starting with the Eiffel Tower, a millionth of a millionth is a tiny, invisible speck of dust. And those are the amounts of chemical that they're detecting, and then claiming that there's a problem, when toxicologists will tell you there is no problem. So you could eat a cup of plastic a day, microplastic, and nothing happens to you. A cup a day, like 70 grams. A whole coffee cup a day, you probably lose some weight, right? Because you're replacing full and you feel full. You're replacing food with plastic. So yeah, it is detected, but so is everything else. And what gets me is this. There was a study that just came out this week, and I put up a post on LinkedIn. This is how they do these studies. They vacuum up all the dust in your apartment, right? Or your office or your school. And then they take all the dust, all the particles, and they extract out the plastics. And then they tell you about the plastics, and they don't tell you about the rest. And I have a problem with that as a scientist. So what is in dust includes mainly dead skin cells, which is disgusting, bacteria, spores, quartz. There's loads of quartz in dirt, right? So if you're out shoveling the garden dirt, that's more dangerous than any plastic you'll ever be in contact with. Quartz dust, if you breathe it in, can give you cancer. Wood dust is scientifically proven to give you cancer. Leather dust is scientifically proven to give you cancer. There's lead, cadmium, mercury, arsenic. All of this is in dust. And in these studies, they vacuum clean all the dust. They throw away the 99% of everything that's toxic and everything that gives you cancer. They throw that away, throw it in the trash can, and then they tell you, oh, look, I found plastic.
That's so crazy.
Right?
Is there anything?
The plastic is non-toxic.
I was going to say, is there any proof that plastic causes cancer or anything like that?
No, that's the thing. It's completely non-toxic, and it doesn't cause cancer. So these people are throwing away everything that's toxic. 99% of the sample gets thrown away, and then they say, look, I found plastic. I'm like, well, you're a moron. That is terrible science. If it was up to me, I'd put these people in a rocket and fly them into the sun for being such bad scientists. And this is just awful. I mean, responsible science is measuring the whole sample, not throwing away 99% of it and only reporting one particle. It's just shocking. I'm amazed that they get away with it. They should have their funding withdrawn, in my opinion.
That's crazy. Well, so if people want to get involved and help out with your cause, what's the best course of action to take to fight the, I guess, lie you'd call it, that plastic is an emergency for the society right now?
Well, one thing I want to say is everything has an impact, right? I'm not here denying plastic has an impact. There is plastic in the ocean that shouldn't be there. There is waste. There is litter. That's all addressed in the book. We know. Here's another example of, so the number one thing you can do, go to the plasticsresearchcouncil.com, plasticsresearchcouncil.com. There's a 20-minute video there. And if you watch that, you will understand everything in 20 minutes. And there's hundreds and hundreds of links if you want to dig in deeper yourself. So that's the number one thing you can do. I want our kids to grow up knowing things that are true. I want our politicians to make decisions, because they make these bans and then they have to reverse them once they see the science and realize it made things worse. And when it comes to litter, and that's the reason people are really against plastic. They don't really understand why they're against plastic. They want recycling because they think it will solve litter. No, it doesn't work. Litter is caused by people, and that is a scientific and legal fact. They literally stand there and watch them drop it on the floor and then blame the litter, right? Or blame Coca-Cola or blame Pepsi. That's just pathetic. People drop litter, they drop it intentionally. More than 80% is dropped intentionally. And the solutions are education, deposits, and fines. And the reason deposits work are the same reason this is plastic money. Hundreds of companies have plastic money, countries have plastic money. And nobody drops it because it's plastic, easily dropped, easily lost. You never see a single one on the floor your whole life because it has a value. And that's the reason deposits work too. As soon as you take a plastic bottle or anything else and you give it a value, or you pay people to clean it up, you don't find litter anymore. And that's proof that people drop litter because they print 8 billion of these a year for the last 30 years. That's one of these every year. That's one for every person on the planet for 30 years. I've never seen one on the floor, never seen one in a lake, in a river, in the ocean. And I always joke in my talks when I give keynote talks around the world, I'd love to go on holiday with my wife and find these just floating up on the ocean. The longer I'm on the beach, the richer I get. How wonderful would that be? But as soon as this has a value, nobody drops it. So litter is caused by people, and replacing plastic actually increases it. So that's a bad idea.
So how can I get plastic bags back in my grocery store? Because it's driving me crazy. I can never remember to bring the replaceable ones, and usually I just end up carrying 20 things in my shirt or something. Is there any steps to push back using the same? It's kind of interesting because it's, hey, if you want to help the environment, it's actually better to go back to using these.
Yeah. I don't know because I'm not a policy person, right? I'm not here trying to affect policy. I don't have any political connections, or I don't have a political party. I don't have any funding from the plastics industry. I don't know how to make that happen. I think the first step, though, is we know they've interviewed supermarket executives and they say, why do you ban the plastic bag? Why do you replace plastic packaging? And you know what they said? They said, we know that doing that increases harm. We're aware of it. We've seen the studies, but we do it because our customers want it. And that's where we need to start. That's what I'm on this podcast for. That's why I've been in the Washington Post and on radio and so forth in my spare time, unpaid. Because if we start with the misled public and we've allowed them to be lied to, they demand changes that cost more and make things worse. So and we teach our kids nonsense at school and they grow up and demand metal straws, which are terrible. So the first step is I thank you, Matt, because hardly any journalists actually cover the facts. They're just parroting internet nonsense because it's so exciting and so salacious, and they get their advertising dollars and they run all the way to the bank. And there's hardly any professional journalist left who will actually read a study and check to see what's true. And so that's the number one thing. We need to get the facts out there so people can start doing stuff that makes sense and helps the environment.
Mm-hmm. No, and I really appreciate it. And I encourage anyone who disagrees with this or is going crazy thinking that we're just lying about things, check out the book, check out the studies and everything. And where can they learn more? What's all your links to find all the data and links to everything you've uncovered?
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? Go to plasticsresearchcouncil.com. I made that website myself, right? Every word there is written by me. The website was made by me. Just imagine how long it would take to find more than 200 studies and find the direct links to it and cite them verbatim. That's insane. And then go and have professors from around the world check it to make sure there were no mistakes. So that's the amount of work there is. And then ironically, I get attacked every day. Some idiot will tell me, some armchair expert will tell me, oh yeah, you're not, you're not right or whatever. I'm like, well, who are you? How many studies have you read? Have you read 5,000 studies till your eyes bleed and you need reading glasses? No, everyone thinks they're an expert, but they're again, it's back to your virtue signaling, Matt. These are people who want to look good online. They want to attack me. And I'm like, well, show me you care and actually read a study. Just go and read one and come back and tell me what you think. And they won't do it. That's how lame they are. Everyone's, an armchair expert. And that's what the internet's done to us. Everyone reads a headline and thinks that they're the top scientists. They'd probably dig up Einstein and tell him he was wrong as well if they could.
No, I really appreciate what you're doing. Even if it's wrong, just the fact that you're attempting to go through the scientific method to figure this out. We don't need emotion when it comes to scientific issues like this. So it's really important that you're taking the time to do this. So thank you so much for what you're doing for.
If I was wrong, this has been out there for 5 years. If I was wrong, somebody would have proved me wrong by now.
Mm-hmm.
And you made a good point. There is a time for emotion. People are putting the cart before the horse here. So people are becoming emotional before they've checked the facts. And then you end up going in the wrong direction. You're running fast, but the wrong way. The emotion drives you. What you need to do but it's harder, is first check the facts to make sure you've got it right and you're fighting for the right thing. And then you engage your emotion to give you the energy to keep going. And I wish people would do it that way around, because there's a lot of well-intentioned people making things worse because they went running off in the. It's like the Monty Python race for the people with no sense of direction. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's hilarious.
Mhm.
That's like watching the environmentalists right now. They're all running around in the wrong direction because they didn't check the facts.
Yeah, do you want to sit down and read a study or this headline about eating a credit card every week?
Right,
Which one you're going to start
right.
telling everybody? So it's an
I
uphill
know.
battle, which I'm sure you know more about that than anybody, but I really appreciate
I
your
know. I wish the
efforts.
truth weren't so boring, Matt. I wish I could tell
No.
you something really. Probably the most exciting thing about what I've uncovered is most of the environmental groups are sold out long ago, just like the president of Greenpeace said, and they're just telling us blatant, provable lies. And you could even write to them and send them 10 studies showing that they're wrong, and they will not update their website. They keep the lie up next to a donate now button, and that's how you can tell they're charlatans.
No, and I think one hopeful thing moving forward with this kind of thing and any debunked popular science opinions is that there's a big group of people who are passionate about reading things, and online you can amplify that voice by working together and getting the word out, which is what we're trying to help do now too. So I think
Yeah.
I'm hopeful about most everything. There's always a solution, and the better
Yeah.
idea will prevail at some point.
Yeah, I think the pendulum, a lot of things are like a pendulum. You end up with woke things and this and that and the other. Corduroy pants are in one day and they're out the next year and so forth. So hopefully the pendulum swings back and people realize that solutions that are based on truth and evidence, they work, and solutions that don't, you can't put a rocket on the moon based on fiction. You have to have science behind it. And hopefully we swing back to that way of doing things like it was in the good old days.
Yeah, and for everyone who's well intentioned, if you want to help and make a difference, there's a million ways to do that. If something that you were passionate about proves to be not as bad as it seemed, there's a million other
Yeah.
things that could use you on their team that are a righteous endeavor, I guess I'll call it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I like to see. People with good intentions really making a difference, not fussing over stuff that doesn't really make a difference or move the needle. That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Chris, thanks again. It was great to have you on the show. And if anybody wants to get in touch, learn more, what's the links to all your stuff? And we'll include it in our episode too.
Yeah, there are two main websites. There's the Plastics Research Council .com, and that's where you can see the bios of a toxicologist, a life cycle expert, famous professors, and everything supporting what I've done. They've checked it, and it's all right. That's probably the number one site to go to. There's also phantomplastics.com. I have specific pages there dedicated to plastic in the brain and stuff like that, and showing, by the way, that study, they used a method that literally doesn't work. So they detected fat, and that method says it detects fat and says, oh, it might be plastic. And then they go, look, we found plastic. They never detected plastic. They literally used a method that other scientists and professors all around the world say you cannot use it for detecting plastic in the body. And that's the method that they use. That's how pathetic that science is.
That's crazy.
And everyone believes it. Yeah, totally nuts.
Well, yeah, thanks again. And anybody else, if you want to learn more, check out the websites, read the book. It's all free and it's all out there just to help society. So thanks again for what you're doing, Doc.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. Anytime. Cheers. Thanks,
Cheers.
audience. I appreciate you listening to facts instead of fiction.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.